Good morning and welcome to the final session of the Global Security Seminars organized by the Nearest Institute for 2025. Today we are pleased to be hosting Associate Professor Dr. Tomas Hoch from the University of Ostrava, who will be tackling the much vexed issue of de facto states. These are, of course, political entities that look like and sometimes act like states, but without the widespread international recognition, of course. Now, his talk, The Birth, Life, and Death of a De facto State, the case of Nagorno-Karabakh, comes at a time when the question of sovereignty, recognition, and the durability of political orders are again at the forefront of global politics. Now, needless to say, de facto states remain highly relevant today. They are not just some sort of an historical anomaly. They indeed sit at the intersection of identity, geopolitics, and great power rivalry. So whether we look at the long arc of conflicts in the Caucasus or the shifting territorial realities, of course, brought by the war in Ukraine, for example, these entities force us to rethink what statehood means, who gets to define it, and how external actors shape their survival or collapse. Nagorno-Karabakh, of course, is a particularly stark example. Its recent unraveling raises difficult questions about security guarantees, the limits of international engagement, and the fragility of political communities caught in the crossfire between regional powers. At the same time, it offers comparative insights for other contested spaces, not least here in Northern Cyprus, and perhaps shed light on how they emerge, how they govern, and why some endure, again, like Northern Cyprus, while some others disappear. So with that note, let me thank you all for joining us again this morning and throughout the semester, of course, and give the floor to Associate Professor Dr. Tomas Hoch from the University of Ostrava, Czechia, who was kind enough to agree to join us this morning. So, Dr. Tomas Hoch, welcome to the show. It's fantastic to have you with us this morning. And let me tell the audience a little bit about you, because you are obviously one of those key scholars at the forefront of research on de facto statehood. So if I can highlight some of your achievements throughout this journey. So Dr. Tomas Hoch studied political and cultural geography at the Department of Human Geography and Regional Development, University of Ostrava, Czechia, where he's currently working as an associate professor. His research focuses on nationalism, separatism, conflict transformation, state building, and nation building processes in the post-Soviet area. He provides expert consultations for the Czech Ministry of Interior, Partnership for Peace Consortium, and for Georgian Abkhaz peace workshops. He is an experienced researcher specializing in field research and qualitative data collection. He has conducted numerous field research in Georgia, Armenia, Moldova, Ukraine, Estonia, and de facto states such as Abkhazia, Transnistria, Nagorno-Karabakh, and Northern Cyprus. He is a member of professional organizations such as the ASN, Association for the Study of Nationalities, the British Association for Slavonic and East European Studies, and BISA, the British International Studies Association. His recent publications include articles in Europe-Asia Studies, Soviet and Post-Soviet Review, and the Problems of Post-Communism. He is also the co-editor of the monograph De facto States in Eurasia, co-authored with Vincent Kopeček, that was published by Routledge in 2020. So once again, without any further ado, Dr. Hoch, welcome to the show. It's fantastic to have you with us this morning. and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mustafa, very much for inviting me. I'm very happy that I can be here with you, at least virtually, because last time I have been in Nicosia, that was this summer, but I'm happy to be back at least this virtually way. And I'm very happy to share with you my experience from Karabakh. So roughly 40 minutes the lecture, and then I would be very happy to answer your questions or comments if I know the answer, of course, that way. So I will try to put there my presentation if it's going to be visible. Yes, so now it's visible. So just you hear me and see the presentation, right? Okay, so thank you. I will start. So thank you very much once again for invitation and also for introducing me. I would like to be brief and to get you familiar to the case of Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, its birth, life, and death of a de facto state. I don't want to bother you long with the theory and theoretical framework, just one slide about conceptualization of de facto states, what they are and what they are not. Then I would like to focus a little bit on the formation of de facto states in the post-Soviet area, because of course that Nagorno-Karabakh was not the only case of de facto state in this space. And then I would like to connect it a little bit to the situation that appeared 100 years ago when the Tsarist Empire was dissoluted. And then a lot of similar entities as de facto states appeared. So I would like to compare these two periods on the beginning of 1990s and then 1917 to 1924, roughly the period. So just very, very brief excursion. Then I would like to speak a little bit about conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh and the emergence of Nagorno-Karabakh Republic. Then about life in Nagorno-Karabakh, its endurance, and then its dissolution. And then I will be happy to answer the questions. So without further delay, just one slide about the theory of de facto states. Usually when we are talking about states, political scientists, IR scholars, or area studies experts, usually most of the people return back to Montevideo Convention on the Rights and Duties of States that used to be signed almost 100 years ago. That was in 1933 in the capital of Uruguay in Montevideo, and it's having four parts, four criteria: permanent population, defined territory, government, and capacity to enter into relations with the other states. The first criteria, permanent population, it's not a very problematic criteria. No matter how big or small the population is, the state can be recognized as independent state. So we are having states like Nauru that had been recognized, and the population is very tiny. Currently, I think it's some 12,000 people. And when it used to be recognized as independent state, the population was even smaller. So even 10,000 people can be the criteria for statehood. Defined territory, states can be vaguely defined, not delimited. The borders, for example, the Southern Sudan, when it emerged on the world map in 2011, then still it was one region, which is called Abyei, where the border is not delimited, because there should be referendum if it will be the part of Northern Sudan or Southern Sudan. So some of the states can be really vaguely defined. The government, that's called internal sovereignty. It should have some popular support. The states that doesn't have the popular support, that doesn't have this internal sovereignty, usually in the taxonomy of weak statehood, they are called failed state, failing states, or collapsed states. But for us, what is the most important here is the fourth criteria, the capacity to enter into relations with the other states, which means that the state is having capacity to enter into the relations, would like to be independent, would like to be the part of the international society, and mostly also the other members of the international society should be able to recognize that state as the independent entity. If the state doesn't have the wider international recognition, then these states are called de facto states, sometimes self-proclaimed state, unrecognized states, pseudo-states, parastate. Sometimes not even states, sometimes they are called separatist entities, regions, territories. Mostly that's the terminology that mother countries from which these entities separates are using. I have to say honestly that I don't like this terminology diffusion, and sometimes on the conferences when people are discussing if it would be better to call these entities as unrecognized states or self-proclaimed state, quasi-states, I don't like it too much because I think it's many more important things to discuss than this terminology. But currently, during the past, let's say, 10 years, I would say that de facto state is the most commonly used because it's somehow neutral or the most neutral from that. Conceptualization, my definition of de facto statehood is coming from Scott Peck, the first author who started to write about de facto states. That's from his book International Society and De Facto States in 1998. And also Paul Kolstad, the second very important scholar focusing on de facto states, and that's from his article Unrecognized Quasi-States from 2006. There are three criteria that political entity is unilaterally seceding from other recognized state. It's having control of the territory it's claiming to and performing the state administration there. They would like to be independent, achieve international recognition, but receive such recognition either not at all or to very limited extent. So currently, in the narrow definition, we can call as de facto states Abkhazia, South Ossetia, and Transnistria, three of them in the post-Soviet area, and then North Cyprus and Somaliland outside of the post-Soviet area. And if we are having a little bit wider definition, because some authors are discussing what de facto states are and what de facto states are not. So there are certain aspects, I would say, around the edges of the definition. So it can be also Taiwan, Iraqi Kurdistan, Saharan Arab Democratic Republic, and Palestine. But it's only few of these states currently, but since the Second World War, we had a lot of them. Nina Kaspersen wrote about more than 20. Adrian Florea wrote about more than 30. So a lot of entities had been called as de facto states since the Second World War. I am a political geographer, and political geographers like maps. So I'm having here two maps in my presentation. First is zoom on the part of the Soviet Union, which was dissoluting, and then the new state emerged. According to last Soviet constitution from 1977, the Soviet Union consisted of 15 Soviet socialistic republics. And when the Soviet Union dissoluted, all of them became independent and recognized states. So it means Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, Moldova, then the free states in Transcaucasia, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, of course, Russia, and then 5 states in Central Asia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. So these 15 states emerged on the world map, and all states in the world recognize these 15 entities as independent state. But according to the Soviet constitution, there used to be a lot of the other subjects of the federation of the Soviet Union. Some of them had been autonomous republics, some of them had been autonomous region, sometimes even in English called autonomous oblast, from the Russian word oblast, region. Some of them had been territories, so all of them had been different, and some of them also wanted to be independent during the period of the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Mostly conflict appeared at the end of the Soviet Union, and then when the new independent state emerged on the map. So 3 of them currently still exist. Transnistria, the tiny strip of land on the left bank on the Dniester River. Then Abkhazia and South Ossetia, 2 Georgian breakaway territories. And then we had a lot of the others like Gagauzia that appeared on the beginning of 1990s, and that in mid-90s it entered as the autonomy into Moldova. Then Chechnya, you probably know that it used to be 2 very violent conflicts in Chechnya. And after the second conflict in Chechnya, it had been conquered and started to be once again part of Russia. And then Nagorno-Karabakh Republic that had been de facto independent since 1994 and ceased to exist 2 years ago. So that's the region that I will be talking about, the Nagorno-Karabakh. If you look on the area and the population, those territories are not very big. So if we are talking about South Ossetia, 3,900 square kilometers, and the population according to last census is 53,000 people. Definitely it is currently less because most of the people are moving away from South Ossetia and moving to the North Ossetia. So currently the people who are residing in the Republic would be roughly 30,000. Slightly bigger is Transnistria, 4,000 square kilometers, and the population is declining. It used to be over 500,000 people. Currently, still every year it's slightly less. If we are talking about Abkhazia, roughly 240,000 people, the area is twice the size of northern Cyprus. And if we are talking about Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, the area differs because the original area was 4,000 square kilometers. Then when they won the war on the beginning of 90s, the area started to be bigger and they occupied a lot of territory that used to be in Azerbaijan. And the population used to be roughly 140,000 people. Some of the de facto states are recognized with few states like Abkhazia and South Ossetia. So you can see that they used to be recognized by Russia, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Nauru, and Syria. 2 states withdrew its recognition, Vanuatu and Tuvalu, and the same is for South Ossetia. We could speak, and we will. Most of the lecture will be about post-Soviet de facto states. But what I want to show here is that de facto states, or these entities that resemble de facto states, are not something brand new in this space that we can call Northern Eurasia. And very similar situation occurred 100 years ago when Tsarist Empire dissolved it. In the legal and social chaos that this period brought, we had over 20 entities that resembled de facto states. Some of them were mostly provisional and revolutionary bodies. Some of them were ethnic autonomies, which later became independent states like Finland, Estonia, Latvia, or Georgia, Armenia, for example. But some of them really resembled the de facto states, most notably Bukhara, Tuva, and Mongolia. And they also had completely different strategies and life. Bukhara had been conquered and incorporated very soon into the Soviet Union. But for example, Tuva had been de facto state for another 20 years, and it had been incorporated into Soviet Union in 1944 at the end of the Second World War. And Mongolia became independent in 1961. So the trajectories can be different. But why I am talking about it? Because you can see that the conditions were pretty much similar in 1917 till 1920 as were on the beginning of 1990s. legal and social chaos created by disintegration of the empire. It doesn't matter if it is colonial empire or the empire like Tsarist Russia or Soviet Union, the land empire used to be. Political and economic weakness of the newly formed independent state. Russia after the First World War was in a state of chaos, and there used to be a huge war of white against reds. But Soviet Union, when it dissoluted, the GDP dropped down. And if we are talking, for example, about Armenia and Azerbaijan, the drop-off was roughly 50%, and there was huge unemployment. So once again, that was something pretty similar. Then ethnopolitical ambitions of the nations that used to live on the territory, they perceived it legitimate to have their own state. And also there used to be the patron state. So for example, for Bukhara, Mongolia and Tuva, Russia was a patron state and supported them. So that's very similar features. And if you look at the map, that's the map of the ephemeral states that emerged shortly after the Russian Civil War. You can spot one thing, and that is that all of them are on the edges of the empire. Political scientists sometimes call it soft belly, Russian soft belly. And it is very much similar as the situation in the 1990s once again. So that's why I'm talking about it roughly. Second map. This is the area of Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Region. I'm not sure if you can see the cursor of the mouse, but I will try to show you. This is the autonomy that emerged in 1923, and that's the borders of Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast, Autonomous Region. In this area, Nagorno-Karabakh survived until the beginning of 1990s. And then during the war, on the beginning of 1990s, Armenians won the war, and they conquered another 7 districts of Azerbaijan and started to occupy them. Armenians called these land liberated territories. In Azerbaijan, they used to be called occupied territories. And then the area of Nagorno-Karabakh, or Artsakh, how Armenians called this republic, almost tripled into 11,000 square kilometers. During the First World in Karabakh, more than 30,000 people died, and more than 1 million people started to be refugees. It means all Armenians from Azerbaijan and all Azerbaijanis from Armenia. So 1 million refugees, this war on the beginning of 1990s. And one thing that I would like to show is that since roughly 1980s, the scientists and scholars of the Armenian origin and the Azerbaijani origin started to describe the relations between Armenians and Azerbaijanis like age-old ethnic hatreds. The conflicts between Armenians and Azerbaijanis, they are dating back to the Middle Ages, and there is really little historical evidence of these facts, that always this territory used to be multi-ethnic, and not only Armenians and Azerbaijani lived there, but also Kurdish population and also Jewish population, Persians, Ottomans. So completely multi-ethnic society. And the roots of the conflict that we are talking about, they started with the Soviet nationality policy, and they are enabled by the glasnost politics. What I like very much is the book of Tom DeWaal, one of the most influential scholars focusing on Nagorno-Karabakh issues. And he wrote a very nice book, which is called Black Garden, which is English translation of the words Karabakh, because you can see how multi-ethnic the society was even on the name Nagorno-Karabakh or Nagorny Karabakh, because Nagorno, Nagorny, that's a Russian word, which means mountainous. Kara, that's a Turkish word, mean black, and Bach, that's the Persian word, means garden. So black garden in the mountains. So that's the name of the region. So you can see how multicultural it used to be. And Tom de Waal wrote that Karabakh was in short a culturally rich border zone like Alsace, Flanders, or Kashmir, and like them, it fated to be a battlefield. So really recommend this book, Tom de Waal, Black Garden, beautifully written book. Briefly start with the pre-Soviet period of the conflict. The conflicts between Armenians and Azerbaijanis, or that time it would be better to mention Azerbaijanis as Tatars, probably, because in most census and Russian census there used to be called as Tatars. So these conflicts started, first violent conflict and violent clashes in 1905 in Tbilisi, in Shusha, at that time the capital of Nagorno-Karabakh, and in Baku. And roughly 300 villages have been destroyed, and between 7,000 and 8,000 people died. That's the medium range. Some authors like Świętochowski are writing about 10,000 people who died. Then it used to be 1915, the events of that period. In some countries, they are called genocide. In some countries, mostly in Turkey, it's called relocation of the population. And Armenians from Ottoman Empire moved eastern direction to the Nagorno-Karabakh region, which used to be under the protectorate of Russia. So that's the period when a lot of Armenians came. Then it used to be war between Armenia and Azerbaijan. It used to be short independence of these three republics. And until the Soviet occupation, Nagorno-Karabakh region claimed the death toll, roughly 15% of the population. It used to be very violent, the beginning of the 20th century. And then when the Soviets came, they created Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Region within Azerbaijan in 1923, because most of the population had been ethnically Armenians. Armenians feel it as a huge grievance that, and usually describe that Nagorno-Karabakh became part of the Azerbaijan, because at that time Soviet Union was not a free country, and it was a dictatorship, so they had no right to say anything. The reality is a little bit more complicated than that one, and that is that also during the Tsarist period, Karabakh had been governed from the Azerbaijani side, and also geographically, from Yerevan, you couldn't go to Shusha directly. It was all the way around via Georgia and then via Azerbaijan to Nagorno-Karabakh, because on the western and northern side, there are huge mountains. So currently, there is a path how to enter Nagorno-Karabakh from the western side, from the Armenian side. But during the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century, there was no way. So that's why it used to be governed from the Azerbaijani side. Results of the Soviet era. Soviet ideology made the friendship among the nations, and there were strict taboo to speak about the atrocities that happened previously. But if I should compare the relations between Armenians and Azerbaijanis, and then the relations that I saw on the Caucasus between other nations that are in conflict, I would say that they were much worse than anywhere else. If I compare it, for example, with South Ossetia, there used to be a lot of mixed marriages between Ossets and Georgians. Also, between Abkhaz and Georgians, there used to be a lot of mixed marriages, especially with Megrelians, one of the sub-ethnic group of Georgians. But between Armenians and Azerbaijanis, no, only few of them, and only in the cosmopolitan Baku, not anywhere else. In the villages, in Yerevan, for example, the Armenians and Azerbaijanis didn't form the mixed marriages because people remember this violent past of the history. And then with the glasnost policy that enabled freedom of speech, people on both sides started to create the image of the ancient enemy. And what I really like is Azerbaijani scholar Rauf Garagozov, and he wrote, when he analyzed the victim narratives of Azerbaijanis and Armenians, that they are very oversimplified interpretation of historical events. They are very emotional, and they are reliant on myth and all grievances. And Rauf Garagozov called it schematic narrative template. And in these templates, people were expressing during the 80s and the beginning of 90s against each other to show the enemy. Both sides, especially the Academy of Sciences, started to create historiography that functioned like important weapon of ethnic nationalism. So I just put here two quotations. One from Armenian side, that Karabakh formed part of Kingdom of Armenia at least from the 2nd century before Christ, and its population has been a continuous part of the Armenian cultural space for over 2,000 years. It's a homeland symbolizing Armenian unity and consolidation. On the other hand, from the Azerbaijani side, past 1,600 years, the lowland and upland confluence of the Kura and Aras, which is Nagorno-Karabakh, were the component parts of the state structure within the territory of Azerbaijan. Karabakh Armenians are not ethnic Armenians, but Armenianized Albanians. So it means the previous population that lived there, and that currently, according to the main and dominant discourse, are the predecessors of the present-day Azerbaijanis. So you can see that this myth production influenced the public opinion very, very much. But focusing on the conflict itself, that Armenians has been very dissatisfied that though they are having majority of the population, still they are the part of the Soviet Socialistic Republic of Azerbaijan. And then the economy is worse than in the rest of Armenia. Also, they had to learn Azerbaijani history, though in the Armenian language, but the demography were declining. On the beginning of the 1920s, it used to be 94% of the Armenian population in Nagorno-Karabakh. During the 80s, it dropped down to 75%, and it had a continual trend that more and more Azerbaijanis moved there. But at the end of the 80s, the Armenian and Azerbaijani intelligence created national identities liberated from the Soviet ideology. So it was a vacuum power, and the Soviet ideology disappeared. So it came nationalistic ideology, and the Karabakh question represented the easiest way to gain the popularity. So for both of them, it started to be identitary question if the Karabakh is part of Azerbaijan or if it is part of Armenia. So then it used to be very huge spiral of escalation. In 1988, the Nagorno-Karabakh Soviet, means the local parliament, issued a resolution that it would request transfer into Armenian Soviet Socialistic Republic. The Central Committee denied. Then the people were protesting in Yerevan and also in Stepanakert in the capital. And then the Soviet Union ended up in 1991, and the Soviet forces withdrew and the full-scale war started. It had never been officially declared, the war, so that's why we cannot say that the war started in November or in December 1991, but it was a war, and mostly it was paramilitary troops. If we look on the factors of ethnopolitical mobilization at that period, perception of numerous historic injustices. Both the Armenian side and the Azerbaijani sides showed the violent history. Armenians had been dissatisfied with the status. Also, it used to be legal and social chaos because Soviet Union dissoluted, and once again, it was political and economic weakness of the newly emerging states. So returning back to the situation 100 years ago, it was pretty much the same. If we look on the economy, Armenia has been after very devastating earthquake that damaged a lot of houses in Armenia. Then it used to be blockade from Azerbaijan and from Turkey. GDP fell down to only 47% of its 1990 value in 1994. So it means only half of the economy. Inflation reached 5,000%. This is unimaginable currently. And the people who lived below the poverty line rose up from 20% up to 50%. So it was very, very bad period for Armenia. But for Azerbaijan, it was not any better. That GDP fell very similarly as in Armenia. They had hyperinflation over 1,600%. And it was huge political instability with 3 coup d'etats. But during the war, Armenians won and started to occupy 14% of the Azerbaijani territory and created the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic. Ceasefire had been signed in 1994, but it was not the end of the conflict. It was only truce, so ceasefire. I put here few pictures just to show you how the situation have changed. The first 2 pictures are from 2006. That's the first time that I had been to Karabakh. And at that time, it was still with the strong remnants of the war. People used to live, I would say, my perception was temporarily. Okay, we are living here, but the war will probably come back. Then I returned back in 2009. That was slightly better. And then once again in 2015 and 2017. And that's the 2 pictures that are below. And you can see huge construction activity. And I would say that even the mentality have changed. We are not here temporarily. We need to make it here beautiful again because we are living here. So that really changed. Maybe we can discuss that one with Q&A, not only about the political things and about geopolitics, but the perception of the local people who live there, because that was one of the most visible changes, that the pavements were clean, the city was very clean. This is Stepanakert, the former capital of Nagorno-Karabakh. So during that period, they had been very closely connected to the Armenian cultural space, and there was a huge construction activity at that time. And every year it was very visible how the living standards are growing up, though it used to be unrecognized state that nobody recognized, not even Armenia. Once again, we can discuss that one later. What I have not been very happy about was approaches to the cultural monuments, and that's something that bothered me a lot. On the left-hand side, you are having a very nice mosque from the 18th century in the Shusha, former capital of Nagorno-Karabakh. And what Armenians did with this mosque for roughly 20 years, it had been in ruins and in despair. Later on, they reconstructed it for the money that came from Kazakhstan, and made from it a cultural center of Iranian-Armenian friendship. So they denied this mosque, that this mosque is Azerbaijani and it's having the Turkish influences. No, they made the museum Iranian, Armenian friendship. On the other hand, the very similar situation is with Azerbaijani side. On the right-hand side, you can see Armenian church and the monastery, which is called Dadivang, from the 12th century. There is a lot of khachkars, the tombstones, a lot of Armenians inscriptions, and Azerbaijani side is currently showing that this church is not Armenian, that it used to be constructed by Albanians, the predecessor of present there as Azerbaijanis. And when you tell them that there is a lot of medieval Armenian inscriptions, they are saying that all of them are Armenian falzas from the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. So they are denying this cultural heritage that is Armenian, and that is a very sad story from the both sides. And people who are focusing on cultural heritage are accusing both sides that it is something that should not continue this way. But then I see that the time is continuing, so I will try to be brief. For a long period, the most influential people in the Armenian politics were coming up from Nagorno-Karabakh. The former president Serge Sarkisyan, also his predecessor, both of them had been called Karabakh clan for 20 years between 1998 and 2018. And when Nikol Pashinyan, the current prime minister, came to power in Azerbaijan, he had been seen as a person who is not strongly connected to Nagorno-Karabakh, so maybe the peace process can move forward. And I would say that for roughly 1.5 years, it really moved forward, that it used to be the delegations between Azerbaijan and Armenia, Ministry of Foreign Affairs meet, and also the proclamations were that they are preparing the population for peace. But then it started to be soured in the autumn of 2019. And I remember one peace process in Austria, and the Armenian and Azerbaijani delegations yield to each other like 2 or 3 years ago. So nothing really changed. And then the relations soured. Ilham Aliyev said Karabakh is Azerbaijan ... And Nikol Pashinyan said Karabakh is Armenia ! His predecessor never said that Karabakh is Armenia. And also the occupied land, the territories, that it is Armenia. Never. Serge Sarkisyan never said something like that. Then also there were announcements of infrastructure investments on the occupied territory, so-called Kapan Hadrud Road, which is something very similar that Israel is doing on the West Bank, creating the infrastructure on the occupied territory. Also, Nikol Pashinyan had been on the inauguration of leader of de facto state in Nagorno-Karabakh, Araig Harutyunyan. And when he said that there will be no land swap, that the occupied territory will never be returned back to Azerbaijan, he applauded and had a standing ovation, which is something that really bothered the Azerbaijani side. But the response was from the Aliyev that he created the Republic of Western Azerbaijan, that Armenia stands on the ancient Azerbaijani territory, accused Armenia to collaborate with the Nazi Germany. And then July 2020, Aliyev publicly criticized the peace process and said that Azerbaijan is having full right to use the force. And then it started to be pretty fast. In both countries, that was the period when COVID started. It had huge influences on the society, not also socially, but also economically. in Azerbaijan, there used to be huge arrest of many oppositional activists. So Azerbaijan at that time was very vulnerable to external shocks. Started to cooperate more closely with Turkey. There had been joint military exercises. They bought a lot of new drones. And also in Armenia, the politicians started to prepare the population that Armenia will not return back the occupied territories. So the popularity of the return of the territories dropped down from 70% to less than 10%. So all these factors created the period that it was convenient for Azerbaijan to start the war. So it was 44-day war with really huge death toll. Over 7,000 people died in this 40 days. And after that, Nagorno-Karabakh received all the occupied zones, territories, and also kept the former capital of Shusha or Shushi. For the first time, there used to be Russian peacekeepers, but Russian peacekeepers did nothing for Armenia to protect Armenian population. So then another war occurred in 2023, which Azerbaijani side don't call a war, but anti-terrorist operation. It took just one day. And after really rapid attack, the Azerbaijani forces conquered the Nagorno-Karabakh defense, and then it was ceasefire brokered by Russian peacekeepers. And the last slide, at the end of September, the president, Shamvel Shahramanyan, signs a decree ending the existence of the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic as of January 1st, 2024. All the population from Nagorno-Karabakh escaped from Nagorno-Karabakh, over 100,000 Armenians. Politicians and military leaders had been arrested, and still they are sentenced in the custody, and there is a trial in Azerbaijan for these politicians. Azerbaijan is having full control of the territory, and right now started to reconstruct the land. So there is a lot of new houses, new roads leading to from Azerbaijan to Nagorno-Karabakh. And probably you registered in August when Donald Trump invited Nikol Pashinyan and Ilham Aliyev to the White House, and they initialed the peace agreement, but only initialed. It's not signed, and it has to be signed. A lot of amendments to the Armenian constitution, because in Armenian constitution that's written that Nagorno-Karabakh is part of the Armenia. So there will be a plebiscite in Armenia. So still we are far away to a peace treaty, though sometimes you can read that it's peace treaty, so it's just initial peace agreement, that one, and that's the different. Okay, so I will end up here, that we are having some time for questions and comments, so thank you very much for your attention. Mustafa, I don't hear you, the microphone.
Yes, there we are. I suppose that was the excitement after such a fantastic overview, I should say. I really thoroughly enjoyed that. Now, I'm sure there will be a number of questions from the audience, and we are definitely looking forward to those, and also comments. So the members of the audience, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to share those with us. But just to start the discussion, I suppose we could tackle this in three particular ways. A number of questions should be raised in relation to the actual case of Nagorno-Karabakh. But there are also questions that we could perhaps raise at the theoretical level, and in relation to their comparative application to other cases. Now, I want to see if you want to perhaps reflect on what is happening at the moment and the impact the dissolution had on Armenia's, in particular, foreign policy trajectory. And when we say foreign policy trajectory, let's think of this in the broadest terms as possible. So perhaps including its relationship with Azerbaijan as well. And what I'm particularly curious of is whether these narratives that you mentioned of the ancient enemy, whether they still remain intact, bearing in mind that, as you said, 100,000 Armenians moved back to Armenia from these territories. That's a huge number. And so I wonder, what sort of an impact this has had, and what sort of an impact do you foresee of this having, like I said, on both the historical narratives or the narratives of the conflict, and also in terms of foreign policy trajectory. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Just it's a lot of questions, so if I don't answer on all of them, please just remind me that I forgot to mention something. I would start maybe with the first one, with the people to people contact and that narratives. You can see. I will tell you that from my own perspective, that on a peace talks, you can see that there are two completely different sides. One is Armenian point of view, and the second one is Azerbaijani point of view. Because the problem that I see here, that a lot of civil society activists, especially in Azerbaijan, if they are having the attitude that they are trying to understand a little bit the Armenian approach, then they are sentenced for treason. And that's very problematic for the peace talk from the bottom up. Because when I see that, for example, the Georgian Abkhaz peace talks, you are having a lot of people on the Georgian side who are criticizing the government and who are open for the discussion with the Abkhaz, because they see that it is very important to have these public initiatives. And also from the Abkhaz side, though the level of democracy in Abkhazia is much lower, and they are, I would say, under the Russian oppression, but still you can see that people understand each other and want to discuss. In the Armenian-Azerbaijani peace talks, that's always very tough, and you are having people who are the special envoys of the government to lead these peace talks. So the peace workshops, Armenian and Azerbaijani, are not leading anywhere. What I saw was on some conferences, the young Armenians and young Azerbaijanis, the scholars, PhD students, sometimes they are having the presentations together and they are trying to overcome this narrative that they are our enemy. But always there is somebody from the Azerbaijani Ministry of Foreign Affairs or from the Azerbaijani Academy of Science who is saying, no, it's not like that. It is completely different and you are too young to understand it. So I would say that there is a social control even of these young people who would like to participate in the peace dialogue. And mostly those people that I have realized are the Azerbaijanis and Armenians who are studying abroad, who are studied in US, in UK, in Germany, Estonia. That's the people who can overcome the narrative. Okay, we would like to live in peace, and if we want to live in peace, we need to change our narrative that the people on the second side of the border are enemies. If they will be enemies, then this schematic narrative templates, we are victims, still only replicating. So that's my position on that side. Maybe you will have completely different point of view. And the second thing, what happened with Armenia was when so many refugees entered. Yes, that's a good question. Most of the refugees came to us to Yerevan, to the capital. So the government is trying to spread refugees to the other parts, but of course it is tough for people, and even the language. They are Armenians, but the language is not pretty much the same. So sometimes you can hear that the people talking to each other in Russian or in English because the accent is very strong. So for the people who are the refugees from Karabakh, it is 2 years, but still I would not say they are completely integrated. Problem is especially with the housing. Problem is with the educational system, because some of the refugees are still in the classes only with the other refugees. And also there is a lot of political problems, because to the current government, which is not very popular, the refugees are showing the vulnerability, because for many Armenians, what the current government did, sign the peace treaty or the truce, that's a treason of the national ideas that Nagorno-Karabakh is Armenia. So of course that the situation is not the best currently in the society.
Now that's definitely illuminating, because this is something that is perhaps happening behind the scenes, that the international community restricts, I suppose, its attention to the high-level talks, and what happens in the background is something that is usually overshadowed. So thanks for sharing those with us. The other question, and this is from our PhD researcher and an assistant researcher also here at the nearest institute, Abdullah Al-Khatiri, and he is asking if you could reflect on the quality of democracy within the previous, of course, administration of Nagorno-Karabakh that no longer exists. Because there is, of course, this discussion within the broader literature on de facto states on the quality of democracy. And considering, again, the fact that this entity was not recognized, like you said, by the patron itself, by Armenia, how were they coping in terms of the quality of governance and the quality of democracy?
That's very, very good question, and very broad one. I would say that in Nagorno-Karabakh,
We like to challenge our speakers.
But thank you for these questions. I would say that in Nagorno-Karabakh, the environment was very, very special, because it was only 150,000 people, and all the elite lived only in Stepanakert, in the capital. So everybody knew each other. So when there were some, for example, presidential elections or the general elections, people knew each other and didn't want to have the confrontational campaigns, because they knew that they are living on the same street and they are going to the same restaurant. So I would say that it was quite different, that when I compare it with the bigger states, when you can have really confrontational campaigns, that one was different. And still, I would say they were pretty democratic on the standards that are not so democratic as the Northern Cyprus, that from de facto states, Northern Cyprus is on the top. But still, I would say pretty democratic. One thing that came to me different than in the other de facto states, and that was the role of the patron of Armenia, because the cultural space was the same with Armenia, and the politicians who had been in power needed to have a good contact to the center in Yerevan. So if they had a good contact in Yerevan, their position in Nagorno-Karabakh was much stronger. And it was very much visible when Nikol Pashinyan came to power, that in Nagorno-Karabakh they started to be scared a little bit. So this is somebody who is not from Nagorno-Karabakh. We are having no connections. Who knows him? Who knows that guy? How he? So you can see that was very tough period. But after that, it came. I would say calming down the situation, that okay, so he's there, but we can still cooperate, because there used to be direct budget support, and also the Armenians guys were coming to be the soldiers in Nagorno-Karabakh, and also all the economy had been connected there. So the Armenia was very important. And for the politicians, it was very important to be connected to Yerevan. So that was different. But on the other hand, I would say that during my field trips and the interviews, when I spoke with the politicians, I saw that they were pretty open and wanted to discuss, and then told me, okay, that's my ideas. Let's speak with the colleague. He's from the opposition. He will certainly have different point of view, but it is important for us to discuss and to be united. Because one thing that I realized in Nagorno-Karabakh, though you are from the opposition and you are from the ruling party, one thing is that you are Armenian and you are vulnerable against Azerbaijani, who is the enemy. So they needed to be united. So the cleavages were not so strong. So they were arguing about some topics, but not with the hatred or with the really temperate situation. So that's maybe to answer this issue, that it came to me slightly different than in Abkhazia, for example.
I see. That's again very interesting. So these invisible red lines, perhaps that never crossed. Now moving on to the what all this means for the study of de facto statehood. Or contested statehood. I know you don't really like the terminological sort of the plethora of different terms that we use to define these entities. But what does this solution mean for the future of de facto states? Perhaps we could again think of this in both the conceptual terms and empirical terms. And when I say empirical terms, would you say that the space for these sort of entities is getting narrower? And I mean, is there still appetite to maintain these sort of states? So both theoretically and empirically, what does this all tell us about the future of de facto states? I know, again, another big question, right?
Yes, thinking how to talk about it, how to explain my position. I think that we have to distinguish between post-Soviet area and the other de facto states. If we are talking about Somaliland, if we are talking about Northern Cyprus, I think that the situation in the post-Soviet area is not connecting so strongly to de facto states in Northern Cyprus and in Somaliland in this sense. But in the post-Soviet area, the war in Ukraine and the position of Russia is, of course, influencing the situation very much. So the war in Ukraine, the result of that war, whatever it's gonna be, it will influence the other de facto states very, very strongly. And I can see that as a researcher, that previously I have been traveling to many of post-Soviet de facto states. Currently, all of them are forbidden. You can't travel there anymore to do the meaningful research. And also for the people, you see that the war in Ukraine is currently the most important issue outside, of course, of the problems with the economy and unemployment and corruption, the local issues, like in every state. It doesn't matter if you are de facto state or recognized state, these issues are still the pensions and quality of the healthcare system and education, of course, that's the important things. But if we are talking about politics, then the war in Ukraine and the position that Russia has after that is important. But to other de facto states, I think that it's just showing the vulnerability that de facto states like Mete Hatay wrote it, that what does it mean to live in a de facto state? So still somehow in a limbo, like de facto something is problematic and we need to find the roads where to go and how to do that, because still there is a lot of obstacles and problems. So I think that this is only showing the vulnerability that de facto states are not here forever. Sometimes they can start to be independent, as the Mongolia did. Sometimes they can join the patron state, and sometimes they can be absorbed by the mother country. That's three possible things how de facto states ends, or to live for a long period as a de facto state. That's maybe the fourth one, to say it theoretically.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think on that note, I mean, I can already gauge the answer, but let this be my final question or a point of reflection, perhaps. And this is something that we usually discuss with our students in class as well. Most of them are watching us right now, so it will be something for them as well to reflect on. Now, there is a lot of talk, of course. A lot of talk has been going for a number of years on the changing nature of the international system. And in relation to de facto states, some people make this assertion that with the changing norms and shifting territories and the weakening of the gatekeeping, there is now a period of opportunity or a window of opportunity for some de facto states to attain recognition. I can say that I'm not. I don't really share the optimism here in relation to this assertion that de facto states may now use this opportunity with the changing of the international system, with the rise of a more multipolar system, to complete their quest for recognition. But I just want to ask you for your final thoughts on this too.
Stefan, you are giving me very tough questions. Once again, I would divide it into the post-Soviet area and then outside of the post-Soviet space. In the post-Soviet area, what you can see that we are shifting from, let's say, juridical statehood into empirical statehood to have the capacity to defend itself. Which is very strongly visible everywhere in the post-Soviet area. Outside of the post-Soviet area, I think that the international norms blurred currently, and it's going to be negotiations between the governments and all of the other actors in the international society, because for the long period, I would say that there was no shifts, and currently there are huge shifts. So a lot of things is going to change during the next few years.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And let me tell you this, we definitely owe you a strong coffee when you come and visit us next time to say thanks again for not only giving us this opportunity and sharing with us your insights and your expertise, but also for your patience in tackling our challenging questions, I should say. So thank you for that frank and honest and very illuminating discussion, Thomas. We really appreciate it. Now, this brings us to the end of the time allocated to us, unfortunately. But Thomas, again, it was a pleasure chatting with you, and we again look forward to having you with us. Perhaps this time in person in Cyprus when you come to visit us next time. And
thank you very much for invitation. I'm very glad that I could share my thoughts with your students and with you, and be sure that I would like to come back, because Nicosia is very nice, and not only Nicosia but all the island that I really enjoy. And so I would like to take the invitation for the strong coffee. Thank you.
It's a deal then. It's a deal. Well, and for the members of the audience, once again, thank you so much for joining us for this final installment, and also for the previous events. Your support is important, and so do make sure to remain in touch with us through the social media. We are, of course, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on LinkedIn. And then do make sure to remain tuned for the upcoming events and publications in the new year. So on that note, thank you so much, and see you again next time.
Thank you.
Catching a bus, never nothing when it's real.